I'm sorry, could you rephrase?
If the Second Amendment was only intended to cover muskets, is the First Amendment only intended to cover letter writing, not talk on the internet?
That's a good point. But here's the thing.
Meaning these principles transcend technology. And that's where we come from, is that you have a First Amendment right whether you're speaking freely on a message board or if you're just talking like the Founding Fathers would. You have a Second Amendment right whether it's a musket or whether it's an AR-15, because the principle and the truth that undergirds it, and I'll let you in a second,
Yeah, for sure.
is transcendent above the technology.
So I'm going to use your logic a little bit. When the Constitution was written, slaves existed in the United States, and that was amended and added to the Constitution when we freed the slaves. Same with women, we gave them the right to vote. So I don't understand why. I mean, it feels like it's a little bit of cherry picking going on because the Constitution is constantly evolving and changing.
Well, but hold on, the First and Second Amendment have never changed.
Does that mean they can't?
Well, but we believe,
have a ratification process.
Well, of course they can, but we think it shouldn't, and the fact that it hasn't is noteworthy. So, for example, we tried abolition of alcohol. The country didn't want it, and we got rid of it very quickly. So we've added amendments and gotten rid of them. Why has the First Amendment stood the test of time? Because we believe, as conservatives, the Constitution was not written for the times, but stand the test of time. Why? Because it was written to analyze human nature. And this is where leftists and conservatives would disagree. We think human nature is consistent over time, whereas leftists think that you're a creature of your environment and human nature changes based on the nuances and the complexities around you. So, for example, we believe that the right to be able to petition your government and speak is something that is eternal and should never change. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and when you refer to the First Amendment, are you talking about the right to speak freely, or are you talking about the right to religion?
Well, both. So there's two parts of the First Amendment, the Free Expression Clause and the Establishment Clause. So it is, you basically have the right to petition your government for grievances or redresses, and the government shall not create basically a state-run religion or the free exercise thereof. That is the original wording of the First Amendment.
So can I ask you how, if the government cannot create a national or state-run religion, when we have justices like Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who is making calls based off his Catholic beliefs, how is that not a violation of separation of church and state?
So first of all, separation of church and state is not in the First Amendment. You're gleaning that out of it. So that's actually a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1803 to the Danbury Baptist Convention, assuring the Baptists that the government would not come after them. So you're insinuating that is the subtext of it. However, the Warren Court resurrected that letter and said it's separation of church and state. However, you would agree that we can never have separation of conscience or morality of state, right?
Can you elaborate?
For example, you have somebody who's an office holder. The values that undergird them are going to be reflected in their decisions, of course. Yeah, so that's what's happening with Clarence Thomas.
Yes.
No different than Joe Biden's Catholic values are what's representing his open border policies.
Yes, and speaking on, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, when Clarence Thomas did, he voted in favor to overturn that. Sure, you can use that argument there. But when it comes to him calling for the court to, reevaluate same-sex marriage and things like that, contraception rights, can you tell me what kind of economic impact either of those things have on it? Like, it seems like a very religious standpoint.
I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here. However, you'll never have separation of morality and state. And you've come up here in great faith, and I want to compliment you on that. You are wearing a Harris Wall sticker.
Yes.
Just one question. Can you tell me her greatest accomplishment?
Absolutely. So I think that Biden-Harris administration was in an unfortunate position when they came into office. It was, around the height of the COVID pandemic. And I wish I had exact numbers for you right now. I should have done more research on that. But the inflation rate has gone down since the height of COVID to now. And Donald Trump's, one of his biggest policies is imposing tariffs, right? Does anyone have the numbers?
Well, first of all, let me just ask, do you guys feel inflation has come down at all? And no, it's okay. So this is important. I'm not picking on you. But this is the problem with just overly studying what the economists say. The American people don't buy this garbage because they're feeling the pain every single day. And I just want to say that, again, I'm just asking, what is her greatest accomplishment, though?
Sure. So in terms of her being the vice president, I'm willing to be critical of Kamala Harris, by the way. I think that there's not a lot of, incredible policies that she's put into place. I know that like Donald Trump has been able to call into the House and, turn down some bills involving the border. But I will say why I want to vote for Harris for president, because she has promised things like the child tax credit. And it seems like to me, like she's trying to do things in order to support these young mothers that are being forced into this scenario to give birth to children that they can't either support or they weren't ready for or they don't want. So the overturn of Roe v. Wade might ban abortions, and it's about what can we do, since Georgia, for example, up until Amber Thurman had a total ban on abortion. What can we do to support those mothers if we're going to ban abortion?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.